Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Female Piercers podcast. I am your host, Nurse Tracy, licensed body piercer and piercing shop owner in Vermont. And on this episode of the Female Piercers podcast, we are going to talk about what is a body piercing apprenticeship. Now, in the last episode of the Female Piercers podcast, we talked about, so you want to be a body piercer. And you heard me talk about my 1,000-hour body piercing apprenticeship. Now, if you're from a state that doesn't require training with another artist before you become licensed, or you're ready to start your own body piercing apprenticeship, let me explain how it works. An apprenticeship is defined as an arrangement where you learn a skill or a trade under another licensed professional. This is done in body piercing, not only to protect the new artist, but the community that they're going to serve. Now, you may think that 1,000 hours is excessive, especially if your state and your country has no requirement. However, my state of Vermont recently decreased the requirement from 2,000 hours to 1,000 hours during the pandemic. Now, what happens during those 1,000 hours? Lots and lots of practice. Before I ever touched a client, I had to practice using my new tools, show my hand dexterity, and practice on different silicone molds of various body parts before I could even touch a friend. I had to bring in a friend that was comfortable letting me do that first piercing on them before I could ever touch a client. I also watched countless YouTube videos, which is what motivated me to start my own Female Piercers podcast YouTube, which you can go and follow and watch this episode on YouTube as well. And it also helped me watch other artists that were piercers show their process. And it gave me a lot of confidence watching people drunkenly pierce their friends at home, especially because I knew I was going to be doing it sober in a professional setting. I also practiced sterilizing my new tools in my new autoclave, which was super scary the first few times. And this may seem like a mundane task, but it's actually one of the most crucial to ensure that we're using safe, sterile tools on our clients and we're setting them up for success and an infection-free piercing. I also organized my station, having my tools and my jewelry, so it could be quickly found in a pinch by either me or my supervisor, especially if I was gloved mid-piercing. I also organized my body jewelry retail, my aftercare retail, so that I could quickly and easily offer it to the client after the service, which is a big boost to my bottom line. Now, body piercing apprenticeships are going to be different depending on the artist that you train with and the state or country that you train in. Now, 20 plus years ago, when my supervisor was doing his apprenticeship for body piercing, he basically had to do whatever his supervisor told him. He said he was regularly told to clean the bathroom, watch this video countless hours until you can finally do something else, mop the floor, and then mop it again. If he didn't do whatever his supervisor said, his apprenticeship was over. My experience isn't quite the same, but some of that is because I already own the shop that we're training in. I already clean the shop at the end of the day before I leave. And sometimes when I'm not convinced that the instruction I'm getting is going to assist me with the next client, I speak up. I ask for an alternative option. This frustrates my supervisor. He loves his old ways, but I remind him that the stories he tells me from his training ensure that he really wasn't necessarily set up for success, nor was the client. So why should we continue doing that if it's not the best way? Now, if you're training at somebody else's shop and you're going to be opening your own elsewhere, look at what works well in that shop and what you'd like to improve. Take that feedback to the new location, whether it be on your own or working inside somebody else's shop. If you're interested in staying on at the shop that you're training in, make it known. They'll let you know what they require for you to be an artist there. Make sure you track your hours. That is your responsibility in the end. Track the types, the quantities of the piercings that you've done, so you know what you need more practice in and what you've done plenty of. This will also ensure that you and your supervisor are on the same page when it comes to your graduation date. Obviously, if at any time your apprenticeship supervisor asks you to do something that you're uncomfortable with, don't do it. Have an open conversation as to why you're uncomfortable. If you're working with a supervisor that's trained others, you should be able to ask about their previous students. And if you can inquire about those previous students' experience working with that supervisor. And in the next episode of the Female Piercers podcast, we're going to talk about how to choose a piercing supervisor. And I'll tell you how I chose mine. So stay tuned. And I really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Female Piercers podcast. Head on over to YouTube where you can subscribe and like this episode and help more amazing people just like you find us. And I want to know your thoughts in the comments. What would you like to hear more of? And I'll see you next time on the Female Piercers podcast.